convene meeting, March 6th, 2023. Can't believe it already, and for the Tree Advisory Commission. So our agenda, our first order of business is the review and approval of minutes. I trust everybody had a chance to look those over. Do we have a motion for approval?
I motion to approve the
Okay,
the
second,
minutes. Seconded.
and all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, I see we have a member of the public here. Are you here for comments?
No, ma'am,
Oh.
I'm actually associated with one of your board members.
Okay.
I'm Danny Starr.
Oh, hi. Nice to meet you. Okay, I'm going to take, I'm going to go a little out of order on the agenda. And I'm going to address a couple of items that we have down here. I had Kim put in our packet a little help for Robert's Rules of Order, which we will follow for trying to steer us into staying on topic and following what we need to do. And I am the first to admit being retired. I'm rusty, so I can make a mistake. And when I do, draw it to my attention. But those will help. But also, since we're such a small group, it is perfectly appropriate for us to follow the Robert's Rules of Order for a small group. And the basic changes there, we don't need to stand to make a motion. The chair doesn't need to stand. Nobody needs to stand. We don't need a second to discuss a topic, and we can formally discuss a topic without a formal motion from the floor. And we can also chair is able to participate in any discussion just as any other member. The chair has a vote just like any other member. And so those are sort of a little bit different from those are modified rules for small groups. Also, the chair can present a motion. So and on that topic, I've been sitting as the chair for about probably over a year. I really lost count when John left. But and in the spirit of rotation, I think it's important that we consider a formalized process for picking a chair. And I think that, and I've thought this over, and thank you, Scott, for what you've done. And I was not elected to this spot. And Scott wasn't elected to the spot, but we volunteered is what we did. So I think it should be more formal, and we should have I'm going to suggest that we do this by vote, and that the chair actually be the individual to talk to the city. So in that vein, there are some things that we can formalize in this process. I think that it works well to start with the April meeting and have the March meeting as our annual vote. So I'm going to slowly give a motion here, present a motion with several points, and do it nice and slow so that Kathy can catch everything on here. I move that the chair be selected by vote by simple majority of the members present. We do have a quorum today, and we would do it by simple majority of members present. And the term would begin in April with the April meeting. Anyone can nominate themselves. Anyone can vote for themselves. If a person is nominated by someone else, that person must tell us that they accept the nomination, that they are willing to serve. And this would be voted by simple majority of the members present, like I said. So we would do this every March and begin in the April meeting. I propose that a chair can serve more than 1 year if nominated and elected, re-elected. And that this position would also serve as the city contact. So in that vein, I would like to submit a motion to nominate Carl Benson as our chair beginning in April. And anybody else can nominate themselves or nominate someone else as you see fit. And we'll hold a simple vote. So all those in favor? Okay, it's unanimous. And thank you, Scott, for everything that you've done. And really appreciate that. And so Carl will be our contact from this point forward, for the April meeting forward. And in the spirit of rotation, I'm a firm believer in the spirit of rotation. I think we give other people a chance to step up and do things. I am a firm believer in that. So other than that, nothing will be different. I mean, it's still, won't be wagging my tongue as much. All right, so we have an update on application 2023-01, the Progressive Club. Bureau has researched this and found that clearly the tree mentioned there is in the city's right of way. So it is a city tree on in the public property there, so it falls under the city's purview. So please refresh my memory. Did you look at the health of the tree when you were?
In all honesty, I'm not sure which tree, and I don't know that we made that determination, but I would have to look at it. My impression was that it was on the left side, across the street from the house, we'll say. Yet at the next meeting, there was some questions as to whether it was the tree on the right, right next to the house, if I remember correctly. So I'm really not sure. That's for you guys to determine and make a determination what needs to be done to those trees. But I clearly, as you see on the lines of demarcation, clearly outside the boundaries, and it's a city thing.
Yeah.
When I was out there,
Mm-hmm.
I took a bunch of pictures and walked around it. And I think at the time, there were no leaves, there were very few leaves on any of the trees. And I didn't see any real problem.
Okay, did you fill this out? Who filled out the checklist?
Well, I didn't.
Okay,
It may have been Walcott.
oh, maybe Walcott, yes, because he's not here to,
He was the one that identified it as the ash tree.
oh, okay.
It's the ash tree.
So this possibly is Walcott. Well, as we'll see, we get later in the meeting, I updated the checklist to provide a place for your name and the exact location of the tree. So maybe that would, and the date too, so that might help in figuring out who submitted it. Okay. So Scott, you say that the tree,
I didn't see anything, especially wrong with it.
so the notes here from the person who submitted the checklist say the tree is dying from the inside. It's very dangerous and large limbs are falling. And we're not 100% clear which tree we're talking about here.
Exactly. That's where I thought we left it, because I wanted to go, I've taken a look at a couple of those trees on that stretch, and there are 3 trees along that segment of road.
2 on the left and 1 on the right.
Well, they're just, I'm not sure left from which perspective, but
No.
there's,
These, and then this.
okay,
and this.
there's one here, one on the progressive, joining the Progressive Club, there's one here, and then there's one down here. I don't know
Okay.
if this is all Progressive Club property or, anyway, I didn't know which of these. I assumed it was the ones on the Progressive Club side of the road. But I didn't know which one we were talking about, and I thought we were still sort of up in the air about which one, so. None of those trees look particularly
Okay,
damaged, or I didn't see a tree that matched the description that the permit describes, that the permit
Okay, but
application
the-
describes.
okay. Well, I'm certainly not going to suggest that we take down a tree if it doesn't have a problem.
I believe it's the
So-
tree in the middle,
There's the big one.
Yeah. and I believe it's an ash tree. The other one is a Norway maple. They're all a little shabby looking, but I don't see them as a threat or a danger to anybody.
Well, if it's a city tree and it's an ash tree, then it would be normally treated, correct?
We had that discussion last meeting. So I would say put it on our tree watch list.
Okay, I think that's a great idea. So we can,
Make a motion that we put that
a second,
tree on the, what is the
in
actual?
favor?
Aye.
Okay, we put it on the watch list.
on the watch list?
Okay,
Just as a, procedurally, does that mean that the applicant would get a response from us and say, we're gonna put it on a watch list, and does that allow them, if they're concerned about particular branches over their property causing damage? I mean, what can they, are they still allowed to trim a tree if it's hanging over, if their
We-
concerns?
haven't had that come up yet, and that is a question. Can a homeowner trim a branch on a city tree?
Normally, if it's overhanging on the property, I would say yes, but I think that, if you find, that there is a need to get trimmed, you know, we have the ability to do that.
You'd prefer that to be done
Sure,
through,
sooner than later, I mean, if there are dead branches or the limbs that need to be addressed, you know, we'll get somebody out there and take it down now as opposed to.
I mean, I think we'll end up waiting until we get some
Exactly.
leaves out there.
Exactly.
We can see what's going on.
And so if you determine which tree and what needs to be done, I certainly will get those guys to put it on their list. And, you know, keep them up the best as we can, if we want to keep them up.
Excellent. I was also thinking just in terms of giving the applicant some reassurance that we did look at it and they do have, if they're legitimate options that we're on, you know. Keeping an eye on things and they do have options rather than just sort of saying, we don't want to head it back to them saying, we didn't see a problem and we'll let you know.
The problem is we don't have a applicant. There's no, that I know, of. Do we have a person's name that goes
No.
with this application?
I don't have,
I'm not sure where it came from.
yeah, I don't have that. I have the checklist, but I don't have,
Yeah, but I know it was.
or unless.
We don't have a
from
person, their
previous
feelings
one.
can't be heard, so there we go.
Well, certainly if they contact us again, we'll have somebody that we can talk to, but we should have a process for deciding what to do, how to inform the person who's applied. That would be, that's something to think about. I did contact, it's not on our right here on our agenda, but 2023-06 Lynn Steinbrenner, 908 Clayton Street. I did inform her that that is not a city tree and that she was free to do to take that down if she'd like, as long as she used a contractor who had a current license with the city, that would be fine, and that she did not need a permit to do that. So I sent that by email. I have not heard any response back, so that's been taken place.
Great.
Okay, we have no new applications for this month. We just had the Progressive Club here that we just handled, and I updated you on that other application. So we can get to other items here. Furia, I think we are pretty much up to speed and up to date with the pruning that's been requested.
I believe so.
Okay.
Unless there's something that I missed, just one, I would like to add the 411 Delaware Street that is scheduled to be removed. March 14th. Stein Tree Service will be doing cutting the tree down and grinding the stump. The rain date will be the next day, the 15th.
What day of the week is that? Let me see. I'm asking because the restaurants in that area are usually not,
block, yeah, that's going to present a problem, at least for a couple hours. They're going to block that street off.
Yeah.
Wednesday.
it's Tuesday?
Okay,
Well, that's perfect.
oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. We won't have an update here on the pamphlet. Walcott's not here. Have you heard, we'll talk about the DFS grant. Have you heard anything from the state?
Not heard a thing.
So it's been submitted in the time frame. So now we're just waiting to hear. Hopefully, we can get those monies to plant new trees. Okay, we've already handled the first two items under our miscellaneous. In your packet is also an updated TAC checklist. I added, like I said, the application number, the name of the reviewer, the date, and the physical location of the tree that might help. So if there are any other additions, feel free to bring them forward. If any way that you think this would improve, we can do that.
Looks good.
Okay, so then, yes, Kim can provide copies, or I can email everybody a copy of this, and then if it gets changed, we have to make sure that we use an updated copy. That's what I'm afraid of, different copies, different
Yeah.
versions going out and being used. We don't want to do that.
Let's
You
send
just
out,
probably give it to Kim so that she has it, and then if you want to email it to the members, that's fine too.
Okay. That's what we'll do. So everybody's okay with this version?
Yeah.
I'll send this to Kim. All right. All right, Tree City USA. We have some discussion, we can have some informal discussion on this. Kim has told me that the mayor plans to have a proclamation for Arbor Day on the city council meeting of the 14th of March. And as he's done every year, we're gonna have the proclamation. So Ron, do you want to talk a little bit about Tree City?
Oh, no.
No?
I could,
Carl, did you want to talk about Tree City?
sure.
Very unpopular topic.
I did see several of the small towns down in lower Delaware proudly displaying their Tree City USA signs, even Dagsboro. Who knew?
Well, I've never been interested in this topic. And in previous acts, it has come up periodically. Tom Maddox was a proponent of us belonging and then fulfilling the obligations, which you know are fourfold. But I just went ahead anyway, against my better instincts, and I thought, well, gosh, if we're actually part of this, as Diane Delgado has noted, we should have a sign of some kind. So I went ahead and bought two, just in case they turned out to be really popular. And when I took this out, I noticed two things. One, it says something about the Arbor Day Foundation. So I went into the Urban Forest book and started reading about James Sterling Morton, who was the first person to propose it. Fellow that came from New York, went to Detroit, Michigan, and then went out to Nebraska, where there were no trees. and he was a strong proponent of trees. He was for slavery, and he was for the eradication of the American Indian. And nonetheless, people banded with him in the state of Nebraska. And it turned out that he became a very, very popular man there. Worked for the newspaper business a bit, was involved in state legislature, and bought a 160-acre farm and filled it full of trees and recommended that everyone do the same. So by 1885, the Arbor Day Foundation was not only a household word in Nebraska, but pretty much throughout the United States, became that popular. They guesstimated in Nebraska in 1874, when they had the first Arbor Day, that children planted about 1 million trees. And I forgot my little book it's called American Canopy, which J. Sterling Morton gives a rather ambitious speech about the importance of trees. But on top of it is Tree City, USA. And you probably have forgotten that this is a rather recent addition to the idea of tree planting in America. It just started in 1976. So the effort there was to try to bolster Arbor Day, which I don't think was particularly floundering, but nonetheless, they did it. And that got me wondering, we've been part of this club apparently for a while, and I was wondering if we've been meeting our 4 requirements. Remember what they were?
I have them right here.
Go ahead, fire away, Carl.
We have to maintain a tree border department, which we do. We have to have a community tree ordinance, which we do as well. I'll explain in a minute. And we have to spend at least $2 per capita on urban forestry. And I think through all the expenditures of tree planting that we cover, that covers that. But we also have to celebrate Arbor Day.
Right.
In some way, some formal manner. So that's, one of the things we would need to discuss. I mean, Arbor Day this year is April 28th, and it happens to be the 150th anniversary for the Arbor Day. So it's kind of a significant time. We have talked about the proclamation, being made maybe on the actual day of Arbor Day, but having it done at the city council meetings probably it will get more publicity. So I think that's a great idea. Searching through our code, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but we have a code 21015 says city council may issue and amend guidelines to assist in the implementation of this chapter, which shall be known as the Urban Tree Guideline. And copies of this are available to anybody in the public. Then it lists basically 6 items, and they're pretty simple. The city will basically oversee all approval of all planting, maintaining, removal of trees, the approval of list of recommended trees, which we do, development of guidelines for planting, maintenance, protection, replacement of trees, approval of pruning of street trees by utility companies and homeowners, the granting with or without conditions of tree permits. So we're covered when it comes to the code. The only concern I have is the actual celebration of the Arbor Day, which we have not done in any formal manner. Although is the mayor acknowledging it in the city council meeting, is that considered a celebration? That would be the question.
And we haven't in the past done planting of trees on Arbor Day?
We're a part of Tree City USA for 10 years. As to how or why, or how the 4 requirements were looked upon, I'm not sure. Not sure if this is something we've done, or if there's any, actual, anybody checking on whether we're following these agreements or not.
would Diane have more information on that? Would that have been done through the city as opposed to the? I have a feeling that it was done with the city and not the TAC.
Well, when I looked at this, I thought that TAC was probably meeting a couple of these or maybe one and a half. Because whatever Arbor Day celebration there is, it's, I suspect, somewhat erratic and not part of a plan. And then the other thing dealt with the per capita $2 per person. And if we have 5,200 people in the city, technically, that means at least $10,000 should be allocated to a budget each year. And there have been years I know where it's been 5,000, 7,000, whatever. Last year was probably one of the first real infusions with $20,000. So you've been meeting it, but probably not judiciously. But you do have a tree commission, and you do have a overriding ordinance. And may I just share another ordinance with you?
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you. I think I need the bottom on this. Yeah, that's it. Sorry, I was get these collated in advance. Let's just say negligent.
You need a copy of this. That's.
But there are different ways to write these ordinances, and I looked at 3 of them. One was an earlier one that Carl had mentioned from Phoenixville. And I thought that was a bit complicated, but it needed to be because they not only do, the city limits of Phoenixville, but they do some adjoining parks and that sort of thing. So it was a little bit extensive. But I picked this one up from Charleston, which I thought was a little bit more direct. All of them have one thing in common. They profess to be reestablishing and maintaining the urban tree canopy. So that's the major goal. That's not the ordinance. And then the ordinances have, but I guess just roughly translated, an ordinance is a rule of some kind. And if it's stringent enough, it could be acted upon by the city council or by the person that is directing what you all do, which is Mr. Bartel. But anyway, they put the rationale up front, and then if you turn the page over, they talk about not cutting down existing trees and whatever. I won't belabor this. You can look at it on your own, but I think the general idea is that most of these places normally state rather specifically what the rules are. And I thought that certainly one rule you all have is that you need to follow the tree list that was put together by TAC. And you need to, if you wish to have a tree removed, trimmed, or replaced, that you contact the TAC to get that. I mean, those are obvious, straightforward ordinances. We don't specify them in any way. But if you remember, Sheila and Scott, Judy Baldini would often talk about, well, what is our process on that? And I think basically what they're suggesting here is that these are, little rules that are adjuncts to the basic ordinance. That's the way I read it.
Maybe the first thing we need to do is to double check with the city if there's something that has been done that hasn't been part of us. I don't wanna,
You
Diane.
referring to the urban tree guidelines? Because that's pretty clear. I mean, it's in our code, the
Yeah.
city code book.
as regarding any Arbor Day celebrations or anything that we've done, anything that's been done by the city that fulfills those
Yeah.
requirements that was not part of TAC that we're not aware of, or that we, that we might not be thinking of. And to see is this something that they do every year, the fulfillment of the things for Tree City, or is this something that they want to give to TAC? I don't know, but I have a feeling that the city has been doing it.
I can check that out. I'll check with, is Diane the person?
Yeah, I would think Diane would be the one to check with.
If I can add that regarding the auditing of the budget that you mentioned, the financial figure that was supposed to be our
Right.
our contribution to the tree for the qualifications for the Tree City. Don't overlook the fact that I think the Furio, your department is very generous with time and resources and watering and doing tree removal and whatnot. And
Yeah,
that's
that goes towards it.
that's, those are budget items in kind, but still for the purpose of meeting
Right.
these requirements, that
Mhm.
those are not insignificant numbers.
No,
Right, it's a great point, and, going forward, I think it should be duly noted. Backwards looking, there was very little of that going on. What Furia was doing is basically a whole new thing, right? To get the removal and the trimming and that's. But, you're absolutely right, going forward, I think that's a great point to make. And at the same time, it doesn't mean that we should at least be lobbying a little bit for $10,000 or more, because it would meet this requirement.
I looked for examples of cities' celebrations for Arbor Day. And there's some cities that do, big event style, and others do simple ceremonies and such. And we were talking about the fact that we're going to be planting a whole row of new trees. And if after that, we could celebrate, if the timing was right. If we had all that work done by April 28th this year, which I'm not even sure if
We
that's
should.
possible.
You should have it, yeah.
Then we celebrate the ending of that on Arbor Day, make a big deal, have the, have an event, small event in town in the square or whatever, just to, to celebrate Arbor Day.
Right,
And even to a point where there's a couple places where you can buy small sapling trees, for $1, $2 a piece, and then we could, sell them or give them away or whatever, just as something to promote the planting of trees.
yeah, I think it would be a great idea, Carl, because we started this Gateway project at least 3 years ago. Sheila and Scott, and it's possibly coming to fruition. I have enough trees on order that it can fulfill the obligation. But it's not an easy straight line. Carl and I were out the other day and we just happened to run into Millie Fleck, who has a house right next to the administration building, and we chatted with her about possibly putting maybe as many as 5, 6 trees in front of her house. It's a very elongated house. And she was adamant that this was not a possibility and that she didn't want the trees there. And, So it means we'd have to start kind of by the bank. Possibly take the honey locust out, which is ripping the sidewalk up and not really doing anything of any great use. And then the other question is, can you do anything in front of the booth house? May I just address that just briefly? You're saying, well, we're not going anywhere. Why not? Well, it's same little packet there, right underneath this ordinance. And by the way, I'd mentioned in a note that in Tree City, USA bulletins, there's a whole deal on preparing a proper ordinance. And I don't know how good it is. I read it over. It went on ad infinitum. I nearly slept through most of it, but it's there. But on the other hand, there were about 11, 12 bulletins, and one of them had to do with planting the right tree in the right place. Number 4, you know, and we're tired of hearing about this. It's almost at a impossible to listen stage. However, next page, if you would, it says factors to consider. This is from bulletin 4. The tree's purpose, size, location, crown, form, or shape. And if you go from left to right, you have shrubs going all the way over to the pin oaks. And I inadvertently have a pin oak in front of my house, which is already about 60 feet tall. And here it is right in the middle of this little continuum. And if you proceed out to the oaks and then finally to the ponderosa pine, and right underneath it, it says plane tree. Plane tree. The bane of Newcastle. Well, let's just stop that nonsense and go on to the first picture. And that first picture is of the London plane tree right in front of the Booth House, very close to administration building. And it was just put in a few years ago, the tiniest little sprout that you ever imagined. And if you just transpose this 1 second, walk down the block a little bit to 411 to the plane tree that we're going to take out, which is now 4 feet across. But it is not in its maturity. No, it is middle age, 4 feet across, and already it's probably about 50 feet tall. Yeah, and it'll be how much? $4,000 to remove. So anyway, my thinking is this. Millie's house is right adjacent to 220 here. And I know who put this tree in, and they might be very, very fussy about having it removed. Probably adamant again about removing it, but why not now? Right? We have new trees coming in, and we can replace this tree, put another tree in front of the Booth House, skip over Millie's, and then go right down the bank. Right down the way there, down to where we have 2 Green Gables.
Is it possible to move this tree somewhere else?
Well, that's a good question. Of course it is. It's
Wow.
a huge expense.
Is it,
right?
yeah, is it feasible?
That's probably what, maybe 5 inches?
Norman?
6 inches, yeah. What, $2,500 maybe to move it?
Oh,
The biggest problem is a piece of equipment to get it out of the hole and move it to the new
Right.
location. You can dig any tree.
Right. And it's healthy as a dickens. I just repaired the sidewalk last summer. Well-
this one is probably 6 inches DVH.
I think it is. It's,
That's a 80-inch tree spade, and that's gonna dig a hole that's gonna take up a big chunk of the sidewalk and a part of the pavement.
Right.
What would you say about that?
Well, it's 6-inch caliper,
I would say about 5
Yeah.
to 6, yeah.
so that's a 60-inch roll,
That's a
which,
still half, twice the size of the hole in the.
well, we moved one at Carl's house. wasn't quite that big, I don't think.
No, it was probably 4 inches, maybe 3 and a
Good
half.
sized ball though.
Yeah.
The bigger the ball, the happier the
Yeah.
survival rate, but also is our utility considerations there? I don't know.
Well, that. That would have to be, that would obviously have to be checked. I know they're redoing gas lines there too, so that's.
Another piece
would
of
have to
this.
be checked.
Another piece of this just happened that we were out at the Penn Farm. And the tree, the path or the road going to the house is lined by London plane trees. And they have one that's not doing well.
Yeah.
And they're all about this
Not this
size.
size.
So this would be a perfect replacement for the London plane that's not doing well at Penn Farm. So in that, I guess what I'm getting at is maybe if that was the case, maybe we could talk to the trustees about it, helping with funding, the removal and transfer of that tree.
Good point, and if we split it with them, it might be, $1,500, something like that.
Yeah.
We need a rainy day fund for that. But you can imagine what this would all look like, 4 feet across and, both ways. And then all the limbs entering the administration building and, it's not too far away from it. And this could be postponed and put off to another time and, another TAC committee, whatever, I don't know.
Well,
It's
the
okay.
sooner, the smaller, the easier to move.
Well, it's my thinking, Rick, I don't, it isn't expedient at any time, but.
What do you think the cost would be?
I'm not sure.
Well, I'm only guessing because when Norman and his group moved the elm tree to the green. By the time it was all done, it was, probably. I don't know, $1,800, something like that to get. By the time all the payments were made and,
Well, I would say the first thing to do is have the utilities.
utilities.
You don't want them to come and spray paint the bricks, but somehow mark the utilities to see if we have room to dig a correct size ball.
Right,
And if we do, then you could go forward. If we don't, you're gonna wind up just having to remove it.
right. Yeah, and the last one we moved, George and Cliff made possible, Furio. They brought the front end loader down. John Antonio tried to move it and with
It wasn't,
his front end loader came right up on the back wheels. Back wheels were in the air. Well, anyway, aren't I just a bearer of great news? I just keep, next picture, please, if you would. Just right up the street
But
from there.
before we go on,
Go ahead.
Gary, what would the city what would they need for us to be able to do this?
Well, the most important would be the utilities check, and Mr. Utility, well, and I see, and Mark, he has some water lines. That's pretty much it, if you're gonna take it out.
We need to have Bill's approval.
In the
Yeah.
sewer,
Well, they would check at the sewer.
Well, and this would, following up on Carl's idea about trying to remove it and bring it out to the farm. It's a great idea because, the trustees essentially have agreed to sponsor you all to grow some trees out there. So the goal is to put 15, 20 trees in and start some type of a planting schedule here. I've got the trees ordered. So they would come in April and then they'd be put in, and I can't imagine that any of the trustees would think poorly of us bringing a nice sized London plane out as a thank you gift for being willing to give us some ground to grow. Just a thought, yeah. Second picture, if you would, this is the honey locust. And I've already checked with the guy that put this in, it was Doug Levitt. Doug owns the buildings in behind it. This is right alongside of the bank. And he owns about 4 storefronts here. and put this tree in a long time ago. And if you look at the base of it, you can see that the roots have found a wonderful home. But unfortunately, too many are above ground. And it keeps ripping that sidewalk up there. I'm also partial and happy to fill a form out to remove this tree. Because then we could have some consistency and maybe plant 8, 9 similar trees all along this area. This is kind of an important area. It's right across from the courthouse and it's kind of, I hope would be the star of the, Gateway project. We'll see. And we're not losing anything here. A honey locust is not the most admirable of trees. As noted, that you used to cut the tops off and use them for hedgerows.
Good for fencing. We want to make a fence.
Yeah.
And a bunch of anyway.
Well, there we are. If I had said it, it would have been unbelievable, but Carl, thank you.
So I'm gonna check with Diane in regards to any history regarding Arbor Day. And
Celebrations.
then check to see if they've ever done a celebration or if they would be interested in us having one of some sort. It's a short time to prepare for anything too big. I would keep it very simple.
Yeah.
Right, at this point, but for years to come, we could
Yeah.
make it a bigger event.
Now, I asked Diane if we had any evidence that we were part of Tree City USA, and she said we had a small plaque and some signature on something. And then Carl, you found one website, I found another where Newcastle is listed as one of the,
Oh, yeah.
I don't know how,
It's in the Delaware, thinking the Forestry Service.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
We're
So
listed.
we're part of that. But does anyone have any objection for this kind of thing to be put on a pole and hung properly?
No,
I mean, is
I
that,
don't. We have the sign.
if you're gonna stay in Tree City, you might use this as an exemplar of your affiliation with it.
Do you have an idea where to put it?
Well, we could
On that.
think about it.
Oh.
Yeah, right there. Right in front of the bank. Yeah, well, it's a big rascal. And when I ordered it, I thought, it's probably, big as a potent, but I'm wrong on that. Any more thoughts on Tree City?
I would say put it near the entrances to,
Somewhere there.
Yeah.
Either that end or this end or both ends and then, yeah. Well,
The only problem, excuse me, in the last city council meeting or a recent city council meeting, they were discussing the Del Dot proposal for the railroad crossing, which is right there by the Walgreens.
right,
And they're also reconfiguring how people are going to come into town, which will mean that island that's right across from Walgreens now is going to be reshaped. So I think we have to be careful with the decision about where we're going to put something. If we want it to be permanent,
Yep.
it may get moved, so.
right, and it's a good thing you pointed out, because I know at one time we were gonna start planting trees at the ferry crossing there in that triangle. So that if it's gonna be reconfigured, it'll probably make it easier to make some kind of a planting there.
Right.
Then it would be logical to put this with the 5 trees or, whatever,
You may want to get permission also from city administration.
Yeah.
Where it should go, where they will allow it. to go.
Right.
Yeah.
But at the entrances, it would make sense.
We have 2 of those. What's the actual dimension?
big.
24 by 30 or something. He's so helpful.
It might be 24. (30 inches). That's what you said, 30 by 24.
Something like that.
Yeah. And I mentioned last time that, you know, you might look to the future and think about a 5-year plan or whatever. Could I just share one little thing about a 5-year plan, and then you can fill in from there and nobody ever says it's all right or it isn't enjoyed, but I ask politely. What? You and I are last. You can always do it. Well, I had to have a little blood work done at the heliport on 52.
I'll say this looked like Westover Hills.
It does, you know, and I pulled out of there and just noticed there was a street called Berkeley Street, and I thought, gosh, you know, I've been here 50 years and I've never been down that rascal. As soon as I turned to go down there, I noticed these a beautiful array of London planes. And I thought, gosh, you know, that's where London planes should be. Place where there's a lot of room between the house and the street. And then it also has this wonderful boulevard. And these rascals have been in a while, but you know, not terribly long.
The other good thing is too, you've got those wide
Right.
patches of grass.
And then I ran into this sign that said tree friendly community platinum.
Where is this?
And if you go to the last
I
page,
thought it was Westover Hills, we're off of 52. Is this Westover Hills?
this one.
Westover Hills?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you look at the last page, it says tree friendly communities. And it has the listing that we have in the state. And then sure enough, Westover Hill is A, C, both platinum. And you notice there aren't many tree friendly communities in Newcastle County. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I think there's an 8th one. And this is a state system, right? Yeah, this is state now. Right. So this is bronze, gold, or silver, gold, and platinum. And there is a gold that I ran into over in Wawasset Park. It's not on here, I don't know why, but they do have the same configuration. Tree friendly community, gold on the bottom of it.
So is this program for neighborhoods as opposed to municipalities?
You know, I don't know that.
It just says community.
I just, yeah,
Yeah, as opposed to, they're not cities, they're.
yeah.
um,
But I was looking ahead to the future and I thought, gee, you know, wouldn't it be interesting if Newcastle applied for, I mean, we're a long ways away from it, obviously, but if you look at the second page, there's a little bit of information about the program, and on the back of that page, there's actually a form to fill out, you know, which is, I'm going to say, isn't really time to do that yet, but
We meet a lot of the criteria.
yeah.
Yes, I think it's overlaps with Tree City.
And one of the things
City.
that obviously is different here, I suspect, I've been to Tavistock, in fact, I've been to about half of the ones in Newcastle County. And another one that's applying, I was told, is Stonewall, which is right next to where you turn to go to Mount Cuba.
Yeah.
So they're applying, and I turned in there, and they still have their bags on from summer. So I don't know how serious they are. But Tavistock, I also found out, has applied for a grant, and, they're already well immersed in the system. So I don't know what they're trying to do with it, but, ours would have to be different, than this, because most of these places that I have visited are much bigger and broader, and then almost all of them have these boulevards, which makes for easy planting and.
Well, and a
bunch
lot of
things.
these communities.
Yeah.
Down here in Sussex, they're relatively
Yep.
new, so they were planned differently in a
Right.
different era than Newcastle.
And once you have this boulevard, then it's easy just to kind of put in, whatever you want. Put in 500 of them, whatever. All you need is the money, and most of these places, this is just a civic oriented kind of thing where the people in the neighborhood chip together and then make it possible.
Yeah.
So you need a different plan here in Newcastle. And it's obviously a sidewalk environment. And I was thinking something maybe along the line of, kind of an arboretum on the street kind of thing, which is slightly different concept. Anyway, here it is, and I just thought, if you wanted to put one thing down for a 5-year plan that you're working on, something that like this might go into it.
Nice signs too.
Well, thank you kindly for giving me
Thank you.
too much time.
It's never too much time.
You won't see me again for a long time. Take the sign with you, Scott, if you.
Okay.
Well, we have no additional agenda items. Is there anything from anybody for the good of the cause? Okay, I will take a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Yeah, second.
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye, we are adjourned.
Shiva for serving as you have for,
I think that's a record. It's not even 5 yet.